So after working with thousands of individuals over the last 2 decades, and majority of those people being in their 30s and 40s, here are the 3 biggest mistakes of many that I see people make when it comes to their health. And what's fascinating is that this era, this 30 to 40 era, and I've got a name for it that I'm going to share with you shortly, it is a defining decade when it comes to your health and your legacy. And when I say legacy, I'm not just talking business, although that can be a part of it. I'm talking your children or any individuals, small individuals, nieces, nephews that you spend time with. That is a part of your signature legacy as well. So if you want to learn the 3 mistakes, you want to learn how to work around those 3 mistakes, stay tuned. But first, I want to share something with you, because where this came from was actually a question that one of my clients asked me, which is, I'm sure, how a lot of people say it happened. But either way, it did. And I was in the sauna, and one of my clients, and he's about 23, about to turn 24 this month, actually. And he asked me the question, when were you at your strongest and fittest? Now, I'm 36, and I thought for a moment, and I said, probably around 25 or 26. And he goes, oh, before you got a bit older. And I'm like, it's a bit cheeky. However, I said, no, it was not age, and it shouldn't be age, because I've seen thousands of people improve with age. I said it was before responsibilities. In my 20s, especially mid-20s, I didn't have anyone else that I had to care for. And a lot of people maybe don't have children, and in their 30s, they don't have another person per se to care for, although they will have parents or something like that that comes up. But what it came down to was responsibilities. You see, in our 30s and 40s, our responsibilities increase significantly, but our time available doesn't. And so because of that, people usually unconsciously shift their priorities as well. This gap, this sort of 30 to 45 age, I start to call the responsibility years. And what's really fascinating here is that what happens is people commonly go down 2 paths. They either A, find a way to make it work and keep training, keep moving, stay healthy, or maybe they don't train, maybe they play tennis or golf, or go for walks and walk the dog and stay healthy and active that way. That's fine. You don't have to go to a gym to be healthy. It does help though in many ways. So you then have the other camp where they start to put their own health on the back burner and sacrifice themselves in some way for their children or for other responsibilities, career, and all of this sort of stuff. And some people have all that come together. Now, this is coming from someone who I've got 2 businesses that I run at this stage. I've got a 10-month-old and a beautiful wife, and I'm at that period. I've watched thousands of people over the last 2 decades go through this phase, and I'm now smack bang in the middle of this phase of like, I have the same amount of time, but I have more responsibilities to fit into it. How do I stay healthy that's relevant for me and stay fit for what's relevant for me so I can do the shit in my life that I want to do, whilst not getting lost on this idea that I have to keep hitting barbell PBs, because you don't touch barbells when you leave the gym. So how do I make my training and my health specific for my life rather than specific for the gym? And there's a gym-centric approach or a life-centric approach, and I support the life-centric approach. Gym-centric's fine, especially if your sport's down gym-centric. Mine just isn't anymore. And so as I sort of started to unpack this, I was like, the thousands of people that I've worked with in this demographic, there's some key differences. There's some mistakes that people make, and I'm going to run through them anyway. And there's a bucket load more than these 3. These 3 are just super common that you see people, or that I've definitely seen people go through. But what's interesting is that the decisions that we make in these 30 to 45 years, these sort of this decade or almost 2 decades, it's a bit of a bandwidth. Some people late 20s, some people late 40s, but either way around that sort of bell curve of 30 to 45. The decisions that you make are intergenerational, fundamentally intergenerational. And this is coming from someone that did a TED talk on intergenerational health. And what I've had the privilege to observe is to see how these decisions not just impact this person's life, but then how it impacts the lives of the people around them. I feel so privileged to be in a position to be able to have seen this so many times in so many different iterations over so many different years, that these responsibility years end up being like a catalyst. And if you think back to your youth and your parents, right, and how they behaved and how they reacted and the values and beliefs behind what they said and their habits and all of that, because when we look at generational health, we look at it in the sense that we want to have assets. Now, assets in that regard are values, beliefs, behaviors, systems, and a family culture. Now, if that's what develops generational health, it also develops generational wealth. What are we doing? Because they're already existing, but what are we doing consciously to not just allow our generational health to be passed on, but so that as we age, 30s and beyond, we're not just trying to slow down the aging process, we're fucking dominating. Like you're doing what you want to do. You can be super healthy and active and doing the shit you want to do in your 30s and 40s and beyond. Absolutely. Sometimes people think that just because you get older, your knees get worse, or just because you get older, it takes longer to recover. And to a degree, that all that can be true, absolutely. But you have to reverse engineer it based upon the life you want to live outside of the gym. And then you got to look at it and go, okay, how do I use something like the gym to be able to help me do that more often when I want to do it, and making sure that my children or the people that are around me or my friends that I go on holidays with, that I'm able to absolutely dominate life in those areas, because that's how I get the most enjoyment out of it. These years become so foundational for what you do with the rest of your life, let alone how the people around you view their life. One of my clients once said to me, I'll take a step back even with that. I said to him, one of the things I've noticed that people in their 40s, especially men, start to do creative work, which I had a client, he's a lawyer doing a manuscript. I had a client who's an economist doing gin distilling. And then I had my uncle actually, who has worked in factories his whole life that would chop down trees and make these beautiful tables out of the wood, right? And what was so fascinating is that these individuals that probably spent majority of their life doing quite logical, factual work started to actually look at this creative endeavor. And he goes, well, usually men in their 40s realize that they can't make the money back that they didn't make in their 30s, so they start to do things they actually enjoy rather than just working themselves to the bone. And I was like, that's a super interesting insight. And what came from that for me was like, you can't make back in your 40s what you didn't build in your 30s. But you can start in your 40s and build for your 50s and beyond. And it's the same with wealth. It's the same with health. Whatever decade you want to use, 20s to 30s, 30s to 40s, 40s to 50s, etc. So what's interesting is that commonly when people are training in their 20s, they're just thinking about training in their 20s. They just have this intensity. But when people are looking at their health in their 30s and 40s, it starts to shift and change. They start to have a longer vision. And I'm going to go through these 3 mistakes, and you'll see how that's one of them as well. But it has to be a longer vision. So let's get into these 3 common mistakes before I start saying them as we go anyway. Number 1 is they use the thinking that worked for them in their 20s. One of the biggest mistakes is that your whole life has changed, but in your 20s you used an all or nothing mindset. Or people go, there's like a little bit of a badge of honor, and they say something along the lines of, I'm an all or nothing approach to this, or I'm black and white when it comes to the intensity or training, or I go all in, or something along this. They wear it like a badge of honor, and it's fine to a degree, because that works in your 20s when you don't have a shit ton of responsibilities. In your 30s, you have a shit ton more, 30s and beyond, have a shit ton more responsibilities. So all or nothing turns into a lot of nothing, because 100 times 0 ends up equaling 0 more often than not. And so the challenge with this is that people have all these, like, I have almost a different body in your 30s, especially if you've had children. You have different responsibilities, you have different priorities, you probably live in a different house, you have different costings, you've got a different stage of your career, you've got all these differences, but people so commonly try and use the thinking that worked for them in their 20s. They'll say things like, when I was at my fittest, I did X. It's like, well, if you don't have X now, it probably didn't work, and it probably doesn't work now contextually. You have to upgrade your thinking. You need to actually gain more flexibility with your thinking and completely shift the way that you view training and view your health. Because if you don't, you can continue to have that yo-yo, which is all or nothing, which is black and white. It's the same. It's a stage of development. It's fine. It works. But it's got to match the stage that you're at. And this is the key thing about the difference of people being stages and ages. You got to look at your stage of life rather than your age of life. And if your stage has more responsibilities, you need more flexibility to be able to maintain momentum long term. That's 1. 2, which feeds into that, their time horizon is too short. So often, and this is part of the fitness industry, it's why, I've written over years and that kind of stuff, breaking up with the fitness industry and so forth, but this is one of the reasons why. People try and fix their health with 30-day challenges or 6-week shreds or even like a 12-week program, but you do not build generational wealth, right? Or build wealth in general over 4, 6, or 12 weeks when they're sprints. You build that over a lifetime. And you do the same thing with your health. And so you need to have a long time horizon when it comes to your health and comes to going like, I had one today. They're like, I didn't get anything done last week. I completely missed a week of training. It's like, we're almost 26 weeks into the year. I'm like, that's 126. I'm like, if you look at the whole year, hypothetically, 52 weeks and you've missed 2 weeks, that means you've nailed 50 weeks. And nailed is just rocking up to begin with one. And so it's this interesting dichotomy where it's just like this short-term vision where it's like, I've missed this 1 week or 2 weeks, or, the analogy that people like to give, which is I've got a flat tire, so I slashed all 4 or something like that. But the reality is that the healthiest individuals think long-term. So they think long-term and they deliver daily. And our ability to think long-term and deliver daily allows us to continue to maintain the flexibility that I mentioned before that you need, whilst maintaining momentum, which is what we want more than anything. And this is interesting, and I spoke about this, actually going to feed into the next one anyway. In my TED Talk, is like I worked with 2 groups. I learned about 10 years ago, I was working with 2 groups of people. Group 1, they would come to me and they would say things along the lines of, I need you to push me through my workout, tell me what to eat, and measure me every couple of weeks, sit me down and set my goals, and that way I can stay motivated and I want to get results. And I would do that, and they would get a result, and something would happen, and they would lose those results, and we had this yo-yo again and again and again and again. And then I had a different group in group 2, and they would come to me and they would ask questions, and they would ask why they're doing certain things, what they could do outside of this. They would ask how does that help them do what they want to do outside of the gym, all of these types of things. And what I learned is that I had 2 groups. In those 2 groups, one wanted to be trained, one wanted to be taught. The people that wanted to be trained, they were just paying me to tell them what to do. They were a slave. Right? They even had slave language, which is like, I'm back for more punishment. Just like, what are you going to make me do this week? Like, all of that is slave language. And I would keep them codependent. Whereas the other individuals wanted to be taught, they were students. They wanted to be almost mentored or advised or develop over a period of time rather than simply just being told what to do. And one person would loan their results from me because when something changed, because it was conditional, they would lose them. The other person would be owning their own results. They would be taking responsibility and they're building interdependence. And so there's a key factor here of like, fundamentally, we need to move from slave is a stage. I would suggest that majority of people go through that, but move from that to being a student to be able to actually own our results long term, because your generational health and performance and your fitness, and I'm talking high performing in real life, because you can do that all the way through, but you need to have this base, and your base comes from being a student. So when we recap that, the 3 main things here, you absolutely need to upgrade your thinking. Your thinking needs to be contextually appropriate for your stage of life, and you want to be thinking progress over perfection. 100%. Perfection is keeping you unhealthy. Absolutely. 2 is you want to stretch your time horizon. And when you stretch your time horizon and zoom out, you start to be less subjective and emotional about it. You can be a bit more objective and factual about it, but you actually start to think about how are the decisions I'm making impacting the people around me and my life long term, because they are, 100% they are. You don't get a choice on whether they are or not. They already are. You're already deciding. Bring conscious attention to it and make sure the decisions you're making are actually on behalf of a greater future. So you can do the shit you want to do when you want to do it. And the last one is be a student. Stay curious, stay coachable, ask questions, and you've got to own your process. You are the process, but you've got to own that and be responsible for it, responsibility. And in doing so, no one can take that away from you. So when you go pay someone, I say this with people seeing physios, don't go to the physio and go, fix my shoulder. I'm paying you to fix my shoulder. No. Say, I'm paying you to teach me everything you can in this next 30 minutes about my shoulder at my level. Even if I voice record it, grab the script, chuck it in GPT and go, hey, can you please explain to me everything my physio said in the most simplest terms, like I'm learning this for the first time. And now you're going to upgrade. Now you've got an investment in that rather than just being literally a slave. So my offer for you, more than anything, remember you're always choosing. So it's bringing conscious awareness to that and thinking, how can I get more done in less time? From a sense of not a place of stress, but a place of efficiency. And it's possible, but it wants to be life-centric, not gym-centric. That's crucial. So if you enjoyed this, by the way, I run a weekly masterclass. It's called the Calm Mind, Strong Body Masterclass. I'm going to help you build out a 30-day plan, not a 30-day challenge, not a 30-day sprint, not a 6-week shred, a 30-day plan to fit with your life so that you can build a calm mind and strong body for good. If you're interested, there should be some details and information here somewhere. Click the link. I'd love to see you online live. Otherwise, that's me done. I'm out. Until next time, peace and pizza. I'll see you soon.